Hi everyone, this is our shed. We built it ourselves with our own hands, and I'm gonna go over the steps of how we did it. First phase, we built the shed itself, and the second phase, it was the deck and the roof over deck and some landscaping. Initially, we were looking for a shed to have a workshop for woodworking, and we were looking to buy it ready to use one, but from doing our research, we realized the size we want and the configuration we want, it's gonna cost us about $50,000 to build it somewhere else and install it where we want it. So we decided to build it ourselves. We are no contractors, we have not built anything like this before, so it seemed like a daunting task. But as soon as we ordered the materials from Home Depot and they were sitting on our driveway, we had to start. We had a place in mind where we want the shed to be built. We had a very dark corner in our backyard. It was practically useless, and it had an old fence across it. So the first step we had to do is demolish the old rotten fence, install the new one, and that would free up the space for the shed, for the size of the shed we want. So we started with installing the posts for the new fence. And of course, we didn't think of calling the city and asking where the gas pipeline is going. So we just dig the holes and installed the posts. And once the fence was ready, we thought we'd like to check where our gas line is. So luckily, it runs right in between the posts. But if you're thinking of doing a new fence or doing a shed and you have to dig a hole, call before you dig, because it's really important. And if you mess up with the gas line, it's gonna cost you a lot. We were lucky enough and didn't hit the line. Once the new fence was installed, we had to put down the old one, and I was doing it with this saw tool that I've never used before. I was pretty scared, but managed to do it. It was quite rotten, so it wasn't that difficult. We put it down, took it away, and then started measuring the space for the shed. And you can see this corner turned out pretty big for any type of structure. So we were pretty lucky to have that corner. Starting with the shed, we had to dig the holes for the posts, for the concrete posts. We digged, in our area, the freezing line is not that far, so I think it was about 1.5 feet hole that we had to dig, and then pour the cement in it and let it sit. We did 9 posts like this, although for our size of the shed it's 10 by 20 feet. The required number of posts, I believe, is 6, but we decided to go with more just to be sure that they will support the weight of the shed, because we were going to use it for workshop and there was going to be some equipment in there. So we installed 9 posts, and then on top of them we laid the beams, the wooden beams. And once those were ready, the process is quite straightforward. You're just building a deck first, and that's going to be the floor of the shed. So we built the 10 by 20 deck pretty much, insulated it really well with the material with a high R value. We wanted the floor to be warm and nice to be able to work for long time inside during winter. And then on top of the insulation we put the OSB material so it doesn't get rotten. And then that was the floor. And then the next step was to build the walls. We built the walls on the ground beside it, and then just lifted them and put them up on top of the floor. Since we were building the single sloped roof, we had 3 walls that are standard height of 8 feet, and then the 4th wall was the 12 feet high. So the 3 shorter ones were quite easy to lift just for both of us. But the 3rd one, the tallest one, it took 3 people and we barely made it putting up this big wall on top of the floor and secured it with the boards just temporarily to hold it upright. And next one, we had to take a break because it was raining quite a bit. But before we went on a break, we put up a big tarp over the structure. So because it was heavily raining, we didn't want the wood to be saturated and got wet, so the tarp did a good job and secured the lumber. So when we come back, it was becoming drier and warmer, so we continued the construction. First of all, we wrapped the walls around with the vapor barrier. This is a very important step for us because we live in an area which is humid and sometimes it gets cold and we get lots of rain. So we didn't want the mold to start growing. And then once we wrapped the shed with the vapor barrier, it was the time for the roof. And as I mentioned, it's a single sloped simple roof. So we just took beams and put them across the walls. We took the distance in between the beams and just secured them to the walls with those metal plates that are designed specifically for roof beams. And then on top of the beams, we put again OSB boards. And then we had to take another break for a few days because it was raining heavily. And again, to secure the lumber and the OSB, we put up a tarp on top of the unfinished roof. And then when we came back, we decided to install a metal roof. So we ran to Home Depot again. We had to do it a few times during the construction because you never have enough materials in the first place. And of course, Home Depot was short of metal roofing, so we had to run 2 or 3 stores. Finally, we found the materials we need and we started installing the metal sheets. We laid them in 2 lines, in 2 rows. So we started with the bottom row, the one that goes on the lower part of the roof, and then the top line would go on top of the roof, overlapping the lower metal sheet. So once the roof was done, we didn't have to cover it with the tarps anymore, and it was quite safe to stay as is. We started to looking for windows to install. We didn't have the windows in the beginning. We wanted to get something in the secondary market, so we started looking for something that people sell. We didn't have specifications. We didn't know what size we want, how many we want, but one lady was selling her 3 windows, same size. They're higher end windows, quite nice actually, but for some reason she didn't like them, or she decided to go with a different style. So we got ourselves a pretty good deal on those windows. So the next step was to install electricity. We hired a licensed electrician in the area because we didn't want to mess with electricity, and we needed a separate electrical panel in the shed because we wanted to use a lot of equipment at the same time. So there was a trench deck from the house to the shed. The distance is not too far. We got the separate panel. We got quite a few plugs inside the shed and outside as well for the Christmas lights. So painting was quite easy. We just used the roller. We didn't use the spray. It wasn't too big of a job. The inside of it, we decided again to insulate it with a high R value material, and again vapor barrier for inside structures, and then drywalling and painting the walls from inside. And the next step, we decided to install some kitchen cabinets to store the tools and nuts and bolts and stuff like this, because this is a workshop. So again, we wanted to save some money, and we started looking for an old kitchen cabinet that people were just giving out for free. And we found a few cabinets that people were giving away because they were installing new kitchen. So we got them. They're in good shape. So we just installed them inside the shed, and our kitten loved it. She approved it. She laid right on top of them. And that was it for phase 1. And then the next phase was going to be building the deck. So when we did this, and prices of lumber and everything went through the roof. Some products increased twice, some tripled. So the cost of building the decks is probably close to the cost of building the entire shed because of the lumber price jack. But we got the materials, so we had to build. Again, we started with the posts. We didn't do the concrete posts. We used the concrete blocks because the weight of the deck is not as high as is not that heavy as the shed itself. So we didn't have to dig the holes. But leveling up the concrete blocks was a different type of challenge that we had to do. Again, on the concrete blocks, once they're leveled and installed, at a certain space between them, we put the beams on top of them and then started building the deck as usual. Once the deck was ready, we wanted to install the roof because, as I mentioned, we get quite a bit of rain during the winter, and we wanted to be able to sit on the deck all year round. So we needed a roof over the deck. So to build the roof, we had to get those thick beams, and we went a little bit more than the required thickness. We went 6 by 6, whereas we could have gone 4 by 4 inches, but those posts were very expensive, and it probably costed more than all the lumber we used for the deck. We had to get them in a special store because Home Depot doesn't sell those big beams. Again, we did the posts for the beams, leveled them up, and then they started putting up the beams on top of the posts. The hardest part was to level up the beams upright. So it took quite a bit of maneuvering to put them upright and straight up, and then put another beam of the same size on top of 2 beams. And then so we repeated it with the third beam upright and the second beam on top of it. So you can see there are 3 beams and 2 beams on top. And so once that was all installed, the structure was pretty solid. And again, we used the same metal for the deck roof as we used for the shed roof, but we tried to make shortcuts and didn't install the OSB on top of the roof beams. We just laid some wood and the metal sheets right on top of it. It's an external deck. We didn't need it to be insulated, so it worked out well. The wood does not get wet, so it was okay. And then, so once the roof is done, we installed the lights because we had electricity already. We had plugs outdoors. We had plugs over the roof just for these lights. The deck is nice and clean, but all around it is dirt. So we decided to do some landscaping and we installed a step. The ground around the deck is quite uneven, so we needed the step just to walk on and off the deck. And then once this step was done, we decided to install outdoors tiles and put some gravel in, so it looks nice and clean. And this is how it looks now. For some privacy, we planted some bamboo in the buckets. They make it look cozy and also make it private from the neighbors. We use this deck year-round. We have some furniture there. We've had this deck for over a year, so it's been working for us all seasons. It is very stable. It hasn't started any rot or anything. Like, it's not wobbly. It's very nice and solid. We have the storage over the other side for kayaks. Inside, we've been using it for woodworking. We installed all the tools and equipment. We have some shelves for the paints. The windows are working nicely. We've been enjoying this shed a lot. And if you're planning to do something similar and have questions or wondering about some part of building the shed, just write a comment and we'll respond. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.